Well, of course, this is the big budget announcement of 2017. It's post-demonetization, like everyone's been pointing out all day. But the big focus really is on the Indian middle class, the tax-paying salaried middle class that forms the spine and the backbone of this country, and they have big expectations after standing in line for 2 months and supporting the government through demonetization. It is now the point when the middle class expects to be paid back, and one of the things that they're expecting is housing. Now, the demand for housing really hasn't gone anywhere. The middle class obviously still needs houses. People still need homes in our cities, but for some reason, that entire cycle has broken down. There are people who need homes, and there are people who are building homes, but they're not meeting each other in the middle. What can the finance minister do at this point to bring our housing market back on its feet and allow you and me, as urban Indians or middle class Indians, to actually buy homes? That's what we're focusing on right now in the run-up to the announcement that will, from what we understand, begin in half an hour. Joining me on the panel right here at CREDAI MCHI, Mayur Shah, Dharmesh Jain, both developers in Mumbai who bring in a perspective of what they think the market needs at this point. Jayesh Karya is our tax expert. We also have Kamal Ulchandani, who is a very senior advocate and needing very little introduction, Anuj Puri, the chairman and country head of JLL. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on the panel. Anuj, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, big expectations. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the chain in the housing sector has broken down at this point. How do we get developers and buyers to actually now start talking again? What does the finance minister need to do in this budget? And it's crucial for the housing sector.
It's a very good point, Faye. This is the first budget coming after demonetization, and indeed monetization, really there were 4 or 5 industries that were hit very hard, and one of them was real estate. And it is very clear, the data that we have as JLL, the activity of construction has slowed down from about $265 billion over the last 3 or 4 months. It's come down to $230 billion. So certainly it has slowed down, so the new supply is slowing down. And Faye, what we read in the papers today is that if the US is going to be as strict on the visas, that is going to certainly impact the IT sector. And that itself will have more problems coming in, whether that is...
the stronger markets of Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad that have not really been hit up till now.
Yeah, and there is a potential of that getting hit, because look at what's happened with the IT companies, the pure play IT companies in India, the way that the stock market has taken a hit because of what H1B visa has come out. So I'm saying is there is a fair amount of negativity with the real estate slowing down, construction activity slowing down, mood really low at this moment in time. And on top of it, one sector that was doing very well, which was the office sector, who knows what in the next few weeks is going to come out on that. So clearly a finance minister, I am hoping that in the next 30 minutes is going to really focus on the real estate sector to bring in the confidence, to bring in more money in the hand of the consumer. And whether that is by giving in, tax benefits on the personal taxation, corporate tax, or within the real estate to provide shops, or to be able to bring in the benefits whereby subvention schemes or the way the affordable housing has been classified, Faye. And on your shows we've been discussing this, and really the needle hasn't moved.
Yes. So do you say that affordable housing classification right now is just bound up being lip service because it doesn't benefit anybody?
Exactly. I mean, certainly in the top 3 or 4 cities, if you look at it, the way that the definition works, I don't think that there is much affordable housing that has been constructed in the last 2.5 years. So that definition, and clearly the focus is middle class, needs to move up.
Needs to move up. In fact, news just coming in, of course, the finance minister has made that meeting with the president, and the president has given the finance minister the go-ahead to present the budget. There was a question of whether or not the House would be adjourned. Apparently, that's not going to happen. The budget will be presented in the next half hour or so. Dharmesh Jain, I'm going to come to you. There have been some, shocking reports of a 30% price cut in real estate. I know the real estate industry came out quite vehemently saying that there's no such thing as a 30% price cut in real estate. But Anuj is right about the fact that we know demand has come down. New launches have come to nearly a grinding halt. What do you believe at this point the industry needs? Because more definition of affordable housing is obviously not working.
Yeah, I think, again, a very good point, and somewhere it's extremely important that we analyze where the market is heading going forward. And our assessment is very clear that there is a market. Clearly the price is an issue. Clearly the affordability in the hands of the actual user is an issue. And we have to work on how the affordability in the hands of the actual user can be improved. So as Anuj said, tax corrections is one thing that people are expecting with the US tax rates. People are talking, and one of the promises that Mr. Trump has is that he's going to bring down the taxes from the current levels to about 15%. So there is going to be a global phenomena where countries interested in huge amounts of FDI will have to look at their tax regimes. Otherwise, no FDI is going to come into any other country. US on its own has the potential of gulping down all the investments that the world can provide for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
But to be fair, India's real estate has been open to FDI for a while. But it's the lack of transparency that has stood in the way, not necessarily the tax system.
I doubt whether that is also the case, Faye. I think the problem lies in the continuous change of regulation. When you talk of lack of transparency, I think the problem has been that there has been so many changes on a continuous basis, and it's important to realize that real estate is a long-term project. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something where you can correct it on the shop floor. You have to make corrections over a period of time. So I think a stable regime, and we've often said that we would welcome RERA. What we really need is getting permission process as part of the regulatory system, and very, very happy with RERA coming in. But coming back to your question, I think the critical thing is going to be on how do we improve the investment climate. There is a problem with the investment climate right now. In all sectors, the moment the investment climate kicks in as far as the country is concerned, you will see a change. Today, the great opportunity that we have is the banking system is flush with funds. We need to think on the avenues where quick and immediate deployment can happen. One of the sectors where quick and immediate deployment can happen is the housing sector. And clearly, historically, in spite of all the negativity around, it's one sector which has the least NPAs. Last year, there was a classification of top 10 sector-wise NPAs, and real estate was not in the top 10. So clearly, we need to recognize that it's a sector which...
Or the developer side?
On both sides. Please take the data, and you'll get the... So again, as I said, it's a sector which, in spite of all the problems, is trying its best to perform and give returns.
Since we're talking about it, Mayur, I'll bring you in here. There was a rumor about a fund possibly created by government to finish stalled projects or delayed projects where developers have run out of money. And there are two sides to this. On one hand, there are customers who've been waiting for 5, 6, 10 years in some cases for homes that they have every right to. On the other hand, people are turning around and saying, why should taxpayer money be used to finish homes that a developer was supposed to finish to begin with? Do you believe that this is a solution to the problem we're facing of delayed projects?
Very difficult. I think the government really should not step in any of the shoes, frankly. Government role is to create policy and environment which can, solve the problems. The best of the, world's economy are finding this as a big issue. There's a big challenge whenever there is a default in a loan. If you look at, I heard someone talking about the best country like Netherlands are also finding a problem when there is a default in a loan or default in thing, how to solve those issues. So these are very tricky things where government should only create policies and environment to create this.
How much of that policy and environment do you think can come in as part of the budget right now? Because there's a lot of stuff happening outside of the budget. There's RERA that's being worked on. There's a Benami Property Act that is being worked on. There's a lot of things that are being worked on. But as far as the union budget that we're going to hear in the next half hour, how much of this policy you think can be included there that you're hoping for?
In my opinion, there is a huge CAGR, 30% growth possible. There's a potential in an industry which is none of the industry can claim. 30% CAGR growth for next 10 years to achieve 4 crore homes which have to be delivered, which is 2022 government's own target. So what we really need to create is an environment where the capital is available, huge, like we had estimated. If you want to really achieve that, 10 times more investment is required. And the cost of those funds should be cheaper. And as Dharmesh rightly pointed out, simple approval system and no more changes. Because a stable system will really, invite capital. Now, I will dispute with FDI, Anuj will agree with me, the huge investments from the sovereign funds and the pension funds have come in past few years. in
But
real
only
estate.
to a few specific
Because of
developers. They haven't reached the rest of the industry. They haven't reached tier 2, where in affordable homes, where the money is really needed. I mean, at the end of the day, the handful of developers who've received foreign funding were really not in that desperate need of foreign funding, to be honest. It is tier 2 India that needs the money.
No, fair. The point is right, because what is happening that when the investors are looking at investing into the real estate market or any market, they have their protocol, they have their principles, and they have a lot of, I would say, detailed scrutiny and assessment. So not that all the developers in the tier 2 city will qualify. So we have seen that there are developers in the tier 2 city have qualified, but not all of them. The other point that I'm just adding over here what Dharmesh said, that it's not an issue of transparency. If you look at from the metro cities, yes, the transparency has improved significantly what it used to be earlier and now what it is. But I think more important is the consistency in the policy. That's what not has been. And there has been, like, if you look at the FDI in the real estate, there has been a lot of changes back and forth. I think that should be avoided. The second one I could see is on the taxation side also, like when we were talking about affordable housing, there was a kind of a tax break which was available that has been removed. Then again, we are seeing a lot of litigation in terms of the interpretation of meaning of what affordable housing is all about. So I think that needs to be, I think, removed. And the third point, what I've been observing for last few years, is in terms of the expectations. So there is a big gap between the expectations of the investor and then the developer. And the developer are not able to meet with the expectations, not because they don't have the wherewithal, but I think, to my mind, I think the policy changes, the tax reforms, and the administrative aspects. I think all three need to be worked out together to make it more vibrant, this industry. That's what I really feel.
All right. You know, I must bring this up here, and I think there is a confusion right now, even within the government, on the definition of affordable housing, whether the government is actually defining affordable housing or low-income housing. And there has to be a difference there, Mr. Bulchandani, because according to me, affordable housing is housing in the 50, 60, 70 lakh rupee bracket in any of our big cities, where the middle class can actually buy and live in city limits without having to drive for 2 hours to reach where they live. That's affordable housing. And that bracket of construction and that bracket of product has received zero attention from the government. And the government keeps focusing on what is low income housing, which has not worked. So is there a need here for the government to sort of step back, study the industry that it is regulating at this point and come up with something that's more coherent?
Yeah. I'm glad that you finally came to me after, because I haven't heard the views of my learned panelists. See, I'll tell you, the difficulty with our government is that it's obsessed with revenue collections. It only finds out avenues to what fields to tax and how much to tax. The instances are very common now. For example, the first one was disclosure scheme, which failed miserably. Despite the force employed by the government and income tax officials, then came demonetization, which also the government may claim, that yes, we have succeeded. But I'm sorry, I do not agree with the finance minister or with our Modi ji. Now, having looked at it, let's see from the taxation point of view what the government is doing. Today, the government has given the proclamation that there are 22 million houses which they intend to construct by 2022.
Yes.
Small cities, 250 million small cities. 2,500 million small villages or smart villages and smart cities. Now, the objects are laudable, no doubt about it. But its implementation is where things go haywire. Now, where does the things go haywire? There is distrust between the government and the citizens. We have to trust the government, and what it is properly said, that honesty is the best policy, but honesty should also show there is money in it. If there is no money in honesty, people are bound to be corrupt. So the government today has to address, first of all, on the taxation angle. See the taxes which are being levied. Income Tax Act is amended every year on account of the Finance Act.
Yes.
The Finance Act, because Income Tax Act doesn't give you the rates. It is the Finance Act which gives you the rates. So what happens? Because of the Finance Act, income tax is amended, and believe me or not, there are 110 amendments on an average every year. Income Tax Act came in 1962.
Yes.
And today, if we calculate, there are about 6,000 amendments to the Income Tax Act. Now, what happens to the law? You have provisions, you have sections, you have subsections, you have explanations, you have exceptions. And ultimately, what results is that when you reach the last provision of the section, you forget what the main provision is said.
So I want to bring you back to what you said, and there are a couple of points that you began with, which were very interesting. And let's focus for a second on demonetization. The fact that demonetization is why we're all sitting here right now, expecting what we're expecting from this government. It was a change that affected every single Indian citizen, and we haven't had, an impact like that in a very long time. Would you say now, looking back from where we're standing right now, that there was even a shred of success in the move?
I'll tell you. Now, demonetization was meant for two purposes. Number one, to bring the black money out.
Yes.
What do you call it as black money? Though I would not term it as black money, because it's cash is cash, money is money.
Yes.
We term it as black and white. Number one is that. Number two, to scuttle the radical groups.
Yes.
Naxalites and all this. It may have been successful towards that extent. But what has happened? The entire cash which came back to the banks is now in circulation. In 1978, there was demonetization for this purpose only. And what happened thereafter? Since 1978, black money has circulated. Today also, after demonetization, we are seeing new 2,000 rupees being seized.
Yes.
How does one assure? Because we have to change our concept. We have to see that we have national spirit, which we lack.
So tying back to what you said, Mr. Gulzarani, has the trust factor between citizen and government been eroded in the last 2 months?
Yes. Demonetization came into effect on 8th of November 2016. From there till January end, December end, the circulars which were issued were all contradictory to each other. Your government makes a promise. If you make a promise, you stand by it. You expect the citizens to be honest, to live up to your promises. Why? There is a government which should lead by example.
Yes.
If government doesn't do that, because in a family.
Do you believe in the next 5 minutes we understand that the budget speech will begin to be read out at exactly 11 a.m. Do you believe that this government at this point owes a debt of some sort to?
Yes. Litigant is government.
Yes.
I am in the courts, I know it. I have been the consul to the Union of India for 12 years. And I know that I have been defending government cases. The government wants to go ahead with the cases and waste time.
I'm going to have to cut you short.
Just one minute.
Okay, one more point. Yes.
Ease of doing business. As he rightly says, Ramesh, that today we do not have the atmosphere around us to do the business. There are so many difficulties which the foreign investors also face. Why not have one window clearance?
Absolutely. And these are things that everybody brought up on the panel. The fact that there is currently what we call policy volatility in every possible way. And we've seen most of that happen in the last 2 months, where things change so quickly that the average Indian forgets the businessman with his entire team of litigators. The average Indian has trouble keeping track with what is going on in this country. And now, given the fact that there's this entire list of things that we need, better policy, an actual policy that wants to eradicate corruption, which, let me point out, has not happened in the last 3 months. Things have actually gotten worse. But, Jayesh, I know you have been studying this in your office. Given the fact that we are so close to state elections,
right,
do you think that's going to take away focus from the list of things that actually need to get done, which is infrastructure, eradicate corruption, actually, look at the tax system and simplify it?
Right.
Let's make an announcement that will help us during our state elections.
A very interesting point, I think. That has nothing to do with the budget, but I clearly see that, yes, that is going to defocus to a certain extent. But the government, I think, should not, I think, look at that winning the state election. I think the point right now for the government is to ensure that how they look at the country as a whole, not as a kind of their respective states where to win and those kind of things. Because right now, today, the mood is kind of that they need impetus. They need the kind of encouragement. They need the incentivization. So we need to get back the economy role kind of thing. And we need the momentum kind of. So therefore, the government should consider at this point in time, to my mind, again, when Mr. Kamalani talked about the A, B, C, D, E, I'll talk about the three, I would say, the pillars for bringing it back. One is, again, I'm repeating, is which we call it as the policy initiatives or the policy changes. So that has to be clearly defined, and that to be a long term and not to tweak around those policies. The second one is about what we call as a fiscal reform, which needs to be brought about, that how do you reduce the tax rate? If you look at the countries where the rates have gone down, and even India also, the rate was 80% and now it has come down to 30%. Yes, there is a need to bring it down to about 20 and 25% to be more competitive when we talk about the US. So that changes, but apart from that, I think what is more important is that how do you kind of balance the collection of the taxes and also implementation of the taxes. Also, the third one is the administrative reforms.
I know there's a lot of focus on bringing down corporate tax, but at the end of the day, I want to refocus on the salaried middle class.
Right.
The salaried middle class that has a third of everything it makes gets knocked out of its bank account before we even see it. It's TDS.
Yes.
All of the money is white. It comes into our bank account.
Right.
We then have to pay on everything we buy, either excise duty, service tax, education cess, Swachh Bharat cess, Krishi Kalyan cess, going up to nearly 15%. It's ridiculous. And there has to be a rationalization for the amount of tax that the salaried person pays in one way or the other, because it's completely, unconscionably unfair.
Fair. I would say not unfair. I would not say it is unfair, because there are
of how many people.
No, I understand. But the point is that there are withholding tax provisions on various transactions. So it's not only that there is a withholding tax provisions only on the salaried people, right? But the point here is that the benefit which used to be available, or the benefit to be given to the individuals and the salaried people should be increased significantly, because they have been, I would say, contributing significantly, almost about 1/3 to the tax kitty. So therefore, like take an example, earlier we had a standard deduction that has been completely done away with. The exemptions that we are talking about for the salaried people who are looking for aspiring to buy their house, the interest limit, which is about 2 lakhs, so that has to be increased significantly. And my strong suggestion to the government that when we are talking about bringing the affordable housing by 2022, then the first house up to 50 lakhs should be allowed as a deduction over a period of 5 years. So that will give a lot of importance. And when you have house, you know, the kind of the empowerment that people have got, the energy that people will have, I think that will bring the momentum back. So that's most important.
So benefits for your first home and not necessarily for, what is being called affordable homes or low-cost homes. You wanted to add something?
Today the salaried class
gets
the house rent allowance, and he gets only deduction of 2,000 rupees per month.
Yes.
Now, is it realistic? As you talked about, that there are several taxes we are paying. I tell my grandchildren when I have a glass of water in the morning, I said I have paid taxes to the government. So what is only left to be taxed is the air which we are breathing.
Yes. And that air is no good, I'll point out to you.
But that is why it is not being taxed. That is why it is not being taxed.
But you touched on, again, an important point, Faye. I think as a country, we need to also start focusing on not penalizing the sectors that are performing. The problem over the last 10 years, if you analyze, is whichever sectors are performing are continuously being taxed more and more. And sectors which are not performing, it has to be the other way around.
All right.
Sectors which are not performing need to be...
I'm going to stop you for a second because I understand the finance minister is about to speak. I'm going to take it back to our live studio in Mumbai.
You can watch live TV on our website mpnow.in. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/magicbricksnow. And don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at magicbricksnow. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/magicbricksnow.